Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Women of Consciousness. If you have been listening to some of our episodes, my co host and I, Natalie, have been really hitting a lot of different topics around consciousness, the wounded, feminine, and masculine, especially around twin flames, has been something that we talked about a lot. And she's on vacation again this week and next week. So I have a co-host that is able to bring in today. And so I guess I'll just do a quick introduction. Um, my friend John, that I met through our let's say healing healing community with plant medicine. So very beautiful voice and perspective on the wounded and healed masculine. So I just really thought for the audience sake, it was really important, as well as for Natalie and I, because we really want to work with masculine, energies and whatnot as well, and have that balance and harmony between the women and the masculine of consciousness. And so, yeah, I just thought it would be really good to have that for the audience. So hopefully this will be a really fun and special episode. So are you there, John?
I am here, if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Awesome. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. How you doing?
I'm good. Really, truly appreciate you joining me. So thank you
Oh,
so much.
absolutely. I'm honored, and it's a privilege to be on Women of Consciousness. I'm a big fan, and I really enjoy the work that you and Natalie are doing. I think it's fantastic.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Um, so I'm curious then, because I know you've been listening to some of the episodes and you've definitely have been, following the journey and like the information and whatnot that we've been sharing, our wisdom. And I'm just kind of curious about your perspective so far, as part of that audience and maybe how you can connect or give your insight there.
Well, you guys have been doing a lot of work with the twin flame kind of myth and archetypal story, and I think that's been really fantastic because I do think that there's a lot of information out there that may not be good for people to pursue. And I think that you and Natalie have been able to present the information very logically and with a lot of references from your own experiences, which I think validates the information and allows people to really put their own paths into perspective. So I think that you guys have really been taking the information that you've been working with and offering it to your listeners in a way that is provocative for our own growth. So that's what I've been picking up from your show.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. And that's been the intention, really, just to kind of set the record straight on some of these facts and myths and just like misconceptions and misunderstandings and things like that.
Right.
Um, yeah, so that's awesome. So I guess I'm just really curious, and I'm sure our audience is, like your perspective, maybe even on just the feminine, the wounded feminine, the wounded, masculine. But I think, yeah, just starting maybe with the feminine energy. Let's go there.
Yeah, I think we're all carrying some sort of wound in this culture that we're living in, and I think the wounded feminine. It's tough because we're coming out of a society where women are supposed to, stay at home and like raise the children and that sort of thing. Like that's an old archetype story that we were working with, and I
Hmm.
think that what we're witnessing here is the divine feminine really kind of coming out and reaching their kind of uniting with the divine masculine power in them, and that's some very powerful energy. And what we're seeing as we're kind of as that's taking shape, we're having to pursue things in our lives that have to go with our heart, and that's tough for all of us. I think in this day and age, as we're all kind of discovering ourselves. So like the wounded feminine, as a masculine, um, I've been kind of pursuing my own wounded feminine within my own self, my own
Hmm.
archetypal mission. And I've recognized that as a man growing up, um, we're expected to do certain things, and we're expected to not have certain feelings and that sort of thing. And that's what I have been discovering, is that I was very kind of shut off to my own feelings, and looking at the feminine archetypes allowed me to kind of open up to what I needed to kind of heal within myself, as I'm starting to see that I can recognize where I'm not connecting to these versions of myself that want to love completely and really enjoy my own self and my own body and my own feelings, and I think that's kind of where the wounded feminine has been, is that the feminine has not been able to really enjoy their own physicality. And that's kind of a journey I think women have been on in these last few years, and trying to discover their true self and their own true purpose and their own true ability to be free and open within it, because we're just living in such a harsh society. And as far as that journey, it's very tough, because coming into your power in that aspect, is a challenge to discover that essence of the beauty of yourself, and then the beauty all around you.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to read, well, not read, but I just want to name off really quick, like some of the wounded feminine and wounded masculine kind of traits.
Sure.
Just, for people that maybe are like, what does that really look like or whatnot? So for feminine, right? And again, like, I love how you're like the feminine within me, because that's something Natalie and I really tried to express to people, to really understand that regardless of your, physical gender appearance, there's a masculine and feminine energy within. And most of the times one is very dominant and one is maybe even dormant. So to awaken that, heal that, bring that into balance. It's a very beautiful, painful and long
Yeah,
journey. And
absolutely.
yeah. So with a wounded feminine, they can be insecure, needy, feeling like unworthy and authentic, manipulative,
Yeah.
victim, playing the victim, overly emotional, codependent, likes to gossip a lot. With any wounded energy, there's going to be lack of boundaries, people
Yeah.
pleasing, being very negative, no, unconfident, lack of confidence there, helplessness, and like powerlessness, and like creativity is stifled.
Right.
Which makes sense because the feminine's intuitive and creative.
Right.
And then for masculine, wounded energy, it's unstable, controlling and demanding, aggressive and intimidating, withdrawn and avoidant, indecisive and overly competitive, again, manipulative, dishonest and untrustworthy, selfish, emotionally unavailable. That heart space, right? You're not able to access that. So cut off from the emotions.
Right.
Frustrated and destructive, narrow-minded, and a weak leader. And those were just some that I came across. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought like, oh, that's a good kind of cheat
That's a
sheet
good
list.
list. Yeah, totally.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No,
And so go ahead. Sorry.
and I've ran into all of that in both and throughout relationships and that sort of thing, and that presents itself
Absolutely.
as that mirror, where what you're being confronted with an exterior circumstance, because somewhere deep in you, or it's in you, and this is that mirror showing you exactly what you need to work with and start to heal and progress.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in my own life, I know, like, it's very easy to slip into those shadow aspects of, that wounds, because we all carry the wounds. Like I, as most men, or a lot of men do have, like, I carried a lot of father wounds that had to be worked with, because over time, my father had developed a situation in me where I had low self-worth. And because of that, I went on a portion of my healing journey just to kind of discover my connection to that and the energy in that. And that was difficult, painful. But then looking back from the kind of like progression I made on the journey, you can say, well, like, whoa, Now I can see why I was acting like that. It was acting out of that wounded place. Now, it doesn't excuse your actions.
Mm.
However, going forward up the path, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And I'm going to recognize that energy coming in and be able to work with it rather than have it work with me.
Right. And I think that's the hugest thing is like self-awareness and catching the patterns, because like this is our psychology. This is how we're wired, right? Neurobiologically. Oh, wow, it's a big word this morning. Um, but like, that's how the brain's kind of wired, then our whole nervous system. So when we get triggered by things and it brings up all of these wounds, but that's the problem realistically when it's subconsciously ingrained from childhood. And then here you are, 30, 40, 50 years old in life, and you don't recognize, the core root of where these things come from. And so like the issues just keep coming up and keep coming up until you actually do heal it. So I think the fact that you're able to step back from that and be like, okay, like this is a father son relationship dynamic, this is how I was raised and what subconsciously I ended up picking up and believing, or, telling myself, even if it was true or not true, I
Right.
think, and that's what we all absolutely, every single one of us goes through. Um, and the whole wounded ego itself, or, like the ego is meant to, protect and defend us to keep
Right.
us safe.
Right.
Right. And so there's like the whole kind of, I just want to say like craziness. I think I don't know why I'm just
It
feeling like
is craziness.
craziness
You're right.
of the ego, because it's like you tame it, and then it's like a little 2-year old that doesn't want to take nap. It's like you get
Right.
it calm, and it's like no, it starts going like haywire again.
Right.
And yeah, you gotta keep coming back to the work.
Well, that's it, and yeah, the ego's a funny thing because just when you think you have it in check, it's like, no, 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 you forgot. Like I have the keys to unlocking all of this stuff, and you're like, oh man,
Yeah,
you really have to like,
yeah,
have a good relationship with your ego because we obviously, we're trying to partnership with our ego so that we can
mhm,
actually have, a powerful existence. There's no way you're gonna get around it completely, but you have to just be able to
right,
understand it more and recognize when it's not in charge.
absolutely. And I think for me personally, the biggest thing has been recognizing the role. Like I don't need to get swept away in that like identity of myself, but I can just know like it's a right, it's part of the programming of being human. It's part of our system of our body and how it's wired. And
Right.
with that I can just kind of be more easy and be like, I recognize you're just doing your job of protection, but like back
Exactly.
off, because like I'm okay and I got to get through this.
Right. Right. And to recognize that you can understand that, all right, I am the power over this thought right now. So,
Mhm.
I do have the power. And
Mhm.
that's a beautiful thing to get to because that's really the essence of the work is to just be able to have that back and forth and be like, wait a minute, hold on. There's definitely two things kind of like really happening inside me. And I know the beauty in choosing the powerful one.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me, it became a point on my healing journey with the whole mirroring and projecting, right? I finally got to a spot where I recognized it, like in the moment of an argument that someone else was like projecting onto me, and I was
Mhm.
getting really defensive. And I think in that 1 second of realization of what was truly happening, on a bigger picture than just a little stupid argument, that changed everything for me. Like
Mhm.
I was able to just kind of step back and just instantly be like, I'm not doing this. Like I don't need to do this. um and I think after that I was able to really continue to just work with it, and the more I would see it, and so I got to a place with the whole projections, right? And I think that's where manipulation comes in, because people are projecting their own fears and insecurities, thinking their needs and their wants and desires and all these things aren't going to be met. And so we
Right.
turn to manipulation to try and get our needs met without actually having to like come out and ask and communicate like very clearly and specifically.
Right.
Um, And so I think I was able to really start noticing other people's projections and being able to say, like, no, I don't feel that way. That's not where I'm coming from. Like, this is completely on you.
Mm.
And then to be able to have those boundaries and be able to, like, boom, separate everything. I'm sorry, something just
No,
popped up from one
no,
of
no
the
worries.
audience. So I started kind of. All right, so the Zion is back. Good morning. You have
Good
been
morning,
with us
Zion.
and chatting with us in the comments for the last couple of weeks, so very much appreciate your support. So I'm just gonna take a second and read this comment. Good morning. I'm talking through music today. Oh, I love it. I kind of wish we did musicals in real life sometimes.
Right?
I saw the Marvels with my son for his birthday, and they visited a planet where all they could do was communicate through song,
Oh,
and
so
I
cool.
loved it.
So cool.
Okay, so I can't still remember me and Miss November Rain, beautiful and strange, always so inclined, coloring outside the lines. Yeah, you were never on time. You've always been slightly awkward, kind of weird, upside down, and not all here. What's so wrong with me and you is crystal clear. Sometimes I'm in a room where I don't belong, and the house is on fire, and there's no alarm. And the walls are melting, too. How about you? I've never been the favorite, though I'd seen it all till I got my invitation to the, I'm going to say Lunatic's Ball, because it kind of cut off there. Thank you for a little bit of poetry this morning.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. It's Shine Down, Ship of Fools. Oh, I love Shinedown. I've actually been to quite a few of their concerts. Um, I caught the playlist. Yay. Anyways, getting off track now. But my feminine loves rock concerts. um, so I'm gonna look really quick. So we kind of talked. I read off like some of the wounded masculines
Mhm.
and the wounded feminines. So just kind of like looking at the opposite side of that, right? When you do the work, you face your triggers and your fears and your
Sure.
wounds and you start doing the soul retrieval and the integration, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so that's how we get to the other side. That's how we become from this wounded energy to this healed energy.
Yeah,
And so for the divine masculine on the healed side, they take action and initiative. They're stable and secure. They are protective, highly present, a strong leader, a provider, giving, courageous and assertive, logical and decisive, purpose driven, reliable and respected, courageous and confident, grounded, focused, disciplined, and they have that heart and mind that's integrated. Same thing with the feminine, definitely integration of heart and mind, because that's going to represent masculine, feminine right there.
right.
So with a divine feminine who is, now done her work, you'll see someone who's intuitive and highly spiritual, receptive and responsive, magnetic and radiant, healing, nurturing, compassionate, loving, right, creative and inspired, vulnerable, expressive and speaks truth, open and surrendering, relaxed, trusting and patient, supportive and empathic, formless and flowing, feels oriented, abundant, and fertile, and that wisdom, that
Yeah,
wise, wise crone, sage energy
right.
coming through. So I think just looking at the difference in the energy of like characteristic traits of a wounded masculine, a wounded feminine compared to like the divine on the other side of that, because again, it is working with the subconscious conditioning placed
Sure.
upon us that we do to ourselves as well as other people do to us. I reached a place in my own journey where I was like, "Oh wow, I really, I really told myself some lies
Oh,
about
absolutely.
life
Yeah.
I couldn't enjoy."
Right.
Yeah. So,
No,
so
I
yeah, I'm
think,
curious.
you
Go
know
ahead.
and I think that we're all on a journey to get to that healed perspective, and all those traits to become in line. I do think that that's a long journey, and
Mhm. Lifelong.
it's got to be done piece by piece. And even what I've discovered is, I'll think, all right, I really worked through something, and I've really gotten to that. And then, here it comes, a couple weeks later, and that triggers up again, and it doesn't always affect you the same way, but there's something still there, and there's always something you can kind of like get to, and there's always a string you can pull. So I think that, once you are on this path, the will to kind of continue and to not get discouraged when you think you're doing the work, but you don't, it's not manifesting and that sort of thing. So I think that's really what we're trying to do, is just maintain the path as we're trying to discover ourselves and really get to all those true characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
Because what would a world be like if everybody was in their divine masculine and their divine feminine? It would just be like a gorgeous planet, And I think that, we have the possibility to work to that. And I think that's what you guys are doing right now with this show. I think that you guys are working toward that image.
Well, that's what Natalie and I, again, coming back to the whole twin flame myth, right? It's the separation of wholeness and oneness of this integrated masculine and feminine. That's like this primordial energy that creates the universe, right?
Right.
Or multiverse. And then splits off. And in that separation is where the wounding of the energy is, because like there's no actual such thing as separation.
Right.
It's just one of those huge things on this path that I feel like everybody is aware of or knows. So you have to kind of work through healing that illusion of separation and bringing it back into oneness. So absolutely. I feel like it's a lifelong journey for all of us individually. We're going to get triggered in small amounts of what we can handle. I don't feel like the soul ever gives the ego more than it can actually handle. The ego is just the one that, freaks out and thinks it's, losing all control or, whatnot. But as a collective consciousness of like a species on a planet, and even the planet itself, and all life forms, like consciousness evolves. And when you look back at, the beginning stages of humanity and life on this planet, we see that, like, you can't deny evolution.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the spiritual ties you want to put into it or not, consciousness evolves. And the more we can heal it and integrate it, we will. It sucks. I don't feel like it's going to be my lifetime, but maybe like great grandkids. But I feel like there'll come a time where we will be living from the heart and the mind of the divine, masculine and feminine within. And because we'll have that, independent individual, healing and integration and whatnot, then it will ripple out into the external.
Absolutely. And, and I think, to be honest with you, I think that's something we can see in our lifetimes. I think it's just an individual. I don't think that, we'll have totality of that, but I think I think we can individually get there. And I think, we're in an energy space right now where we can really pursue these things if you're willing to do the work. Now, the work is difficult. And, and that's what I've discovered is that once you kind of sign on for a journey like this, you have to be prepared, because it is not easy. Again, just like the twin flame journey. I mean, that's full of like pain and heartbreak and all these different emotions, joy, and then all of a sudden just anger. And I think that's the indicative of any energy needed for true transformation and self-discovery.
Absolutely. And oh gosh, I had a thought, I lost it, so just keep talking.
Well, I think it's a lot of this work is outside the comfort zone, and what I've found that's been my most healing aspects of this journey has been just operating so far out of my comfort zone that I'm discovering where my abilities are truly, and it's not pretty. Like everybody talks about, the kind of ascent from like apprentice to master, this kind of journey, and really trying to break down yourself to find the true roots of all these different things that cause these woundings. That's that journey from master to apprentice. And that is a difficult fall. And that's like that's metaphorically kind of imaging the fall of grace, that we all, that the human species took, coming down, stepping down from our spiritualness into our physicality.
Hmm.
And that journey is something that has to be really embodied. And I think for like for men especially, like what I've done on my healing journey, I've recognized that um doing these things like you know providing for a family, and then having situations where it's a lot harder to provide for your family, that's a huge, like, um it's a huge hit to the ego. It's a huge hit to all these things that are so archetypal in protecting and wanting to be the provider and all these things. But then you discover a different version of yourself as you're pursuing it harder and harder, and just doing whatever you can, and then trying to, and then getting back up to a certain level. So you find a new power in all that. So that breakdown of yourself and to a
Hmm.
new low, then only to get back, climb yourself back up to another high, is a
Right.
beautiful journey. And in that, all that wounding can be discovered, because when you're in that pit, you recognize
Yes.
nothing is happening to me, it's happening for me, and what I can do is use this situation to really get to that thing in myself that I feel I need to get to, because it's all being presented for you to discover.
Absolutely. And I agree. Right. I think we all can relate to hitting a rock bottom,
Sure.
whether it's relationships or with an addiction, careers, right? Just, yeah. I agree. When you can sit in there and not feel like the world is against you and coming at you, but
Right.
recognize, like, what is this removing? What is this showing me
Hmm.
about myself and this misalignment that I'm now, in? And that's how I even look at depression. And those stages that I really went through, that dark, heavy energy, it wasn't so much that I hated my life or, hated didn't want to be alive. It was the fact that I hated that phase. I wasn't comfortable with the pain in that phase. I wasn't comfortable with maybe like the lack of creativity and the lack of like productivity, because depression just drains you and whatnot. So, but in that space, there's so much healing that is able to be worked with and through and to get to the other side. So then it's not like this lifelong cloud of depression. It was just, this one winter season. Um, so I agree with that. And I remember now what I was thinking as you were talking. When you're talking about, like choosing to do the work and then the twin flame path being hard, painful. I was thinking of the hero's journey, because that's
Sure.
definitely something like structurally, again, with these myth stories and with these archetypes, right? We go through the process of the hero's journey through those stages.
Hmm.
In the very beginning, it is living in that comfort zone,
Hmm.
being very familiar with the world that you're in and around you, and not wanting to really move out of that. So the first thing is like the calling that you hear to like shake things up, and
Right.
and I think like that's a difference between a hero, like a not just a hero's journey, but a regular outside of twin flame. Like I feel like anything outside of twin flame, because I feel like with the twin flame, like, I didn't even know what the calling was, and I didn't really
Right.
have a choice. It was almost like the universe just God, I hate this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like the universe just put a leash on me and started,
Hmm.
like, walking me this way.
Yeah.
And it was like, "Here you go. Let's go. You don't really have a choice because this is what you signed up for."
Right. And that's surrendering to the process right there,
Yeah,
and just kind of going with it, because that, it's not an, it's you wouldn't have signed up for what you were about to do, but you know how important the work was, and you were going to do it.
yes. And that's the biggest thing, I think, for some lessons, for some healing aspects, whatever. I feel like some things we do have that free will, right? Where we might be hearing the universe, calling us down that path or giving us signs, trying to move us that way.
Sure.
But if the ego is like, no, I don't want to, then the universe is like, okay, fine, I back off. Like, this is where your free will comes in. But I feel like some things are destiny
Right.
and are really truly meant to happen in a line.
Yeah.
And for some of these, and that's how it is just with these archetypal stories and narratives and energies that flow through us.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah. um so I'm kind of curious because earlier on in the very beginning you were talking about working with your own inner feminine to help yourself come into that balance and harmony and integration and doing the soul retrieval and whatnot. um, so just kind of for our audience, because I did talk in the past as well last week about my own personal myth story with, some of the goddesses and the archetypes that I found within me and was channeling and whatnot. So is there any way, like, especially for the men in the audience that are maybe curious about how they can discover the inner feminine, like, is there any way you could just, are you comfortable, I guess,
No, totally. Well, I
about like
think
the goddess energy that you discovered and how you were able to work with that and integrate that?
yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely drawn to, the Greek stories and that sort of thing. And I really attached to Demeter, who,
Yeah,
the goddess of harvest and
right.
uh
Persephone's mother. I was talking about
absolutely,
Persephone last
yeah.
week.
And then you're right.
Yes.
And I'm very tied to her journey and the story of Eleusis and that sort of thing. But even through with Demeter, I had connected to this story of Psyche very much because the story of Psyche I thought was very interesting, where Aphrodite kind of doesn't like the fact that she's kind of getting a lot of attention and that sort of thing from everybody, and people are building statues for her rather than Aphrodite. And without telling the whole story, she kind of she falls in love with Aphrodite's son, Eros. I
Hmm.
always say that wrong, but
Yes.
they end up falling in love. But she's immortal, so there's kind of this like again this like love story that doesn't really line up. Like it's not true love because they can't even look at each other. That sort of thing. It's
Right.
like they can only
Yeah.
have so it's like this
Yep.
darkness thing that's happening.
Yeah, I'm
And
familiar with that one. He's like, don't look at my face or I'll eat
right.
you.
Yeah, exactly. So, her sisters kind of convince her to like,
Yeah.
oh, he's a monster and this sort of thing because they're jealous that she's living in this big palace and has all this cool stuff. So, she does kind of sneak up on him, sees his face, and then he's like, all right, this is over. You broke the rules. And she has to kind of go, she goes to Demeter's temple and like serves there,
Hmm.
and it for me, and this is just me because from
Right.
my masculine journey, her her working in that temple and sweeping the floor and like basically like this fall from grace,
Yes.
kind of showed me, and then showed me like I just really connected to that story. I really connected to that idea of this divine feminine, so like who didn't really ask for her beauty, she just was beautiful, and it kind of just kind of it befallen her that she was put in this situation because Aphrodite had put this kind of curse that no mortal man would fall in love with her, so she was just kind of waiting around to get married, and it really wasn't had anything to do with her kind of pursuing anything. So I'm kind of rambling here, but she does go. She has to have 3 trials, and in those trials, she kind of gains back her ability to be this like divine feminine, and that archetypal story always kind of connected to me because I recognize that I would have to really figure out these things within me that I needed to heal. And a lot of it was body consciousness. I grew up, I was heavy growing up, and I had a lot of body consciousness that was programmed into me that I had to work with.
Right.
And it was kind of rediscovering my connection to like this like archetypal feminine story that kind of started it all for me. But as far as like, I mean, that's as far as what I can offer to men, I think it is. I think it's a lot about rediscovering your ability to like dance. I
Aw,
don't think men dance enough. I don't think we let ourselves,
yeah,
and it's a very primitive, primal thing to dance. But it is also a very airy, feminine thing.
right.
And I think that that's kind of like the first step is really getting comfortable and in your body and dancing because I was one of those people that no matter how big I was, I danced. I was a dancer. I went to a lot of concerts. If I hear music, I'll start dancing. So that was always a thing, and I kind of got away from that and really needed to re-embrace that kind of thing. And then I really attached to um, my ability to like care for my kids
Hmm.
and really reattach to the true like mother aspect within me
Hmm.
through kind of interacting with my children and really like not just being a very strong masculine provider, but understanding that I can also like I can give the love, and
Right.
I can really like play and make that joy happen, and really like embrace the relationship that I have with them, and truly care for them um, from my divine aspect or my divine feminine aspect, rather as well as my masculine, like kind of switching back and forth and like really feeling the energy. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now.
No, no, I absolutely understand and agree. Like, same thing for me. Anana, right? The underworld and the seven gateways, and at each one she has to strip off an article of
Right.
right, that's very symbolic to just the journey and whatnot, and then at the end kind of die and have that rebirth. And that's why last week's episode I was really trying to kind of put it out there, like follow what resonates with you, follow those time periods and those cultures. Because, like you said, we both are drawn to Greek history and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, Egyptian and Mesopotamian for me and whatnot,
Mhm.
and a few others. But I feel
Absolutely.
like, yeah, the archetypes are within us. And when we start finding those small little connections that just feel right, it's the ego that I think gets all in the mind and is like, oh, this is just a story, or you know what I mean, or like doesn't quite be able to connect the dots fully.
Oh yeah.
um
No, these are powerful energies.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's what it is. It's energy, right? Of that masculine, feminine. When you look at the stories of the gods and the goddesses and the myths and all of that, there's so much tragedy. There's so much, violence and betrayal, as well as there's like obviously the beauty and the love.
for
But
sure.
but it doesn't seem like they got happy ever afters very often. Like, it
But
was
they
always
got,
ending
but
in a tragedy and a death and heartache.
right, but they discovered something or they created situations that we now look at. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of indicative of this life. It's like there's a
Right.
lot. It's not these like fairy tales with like
Yeah.
happy endings,
Right.
but like it's meaningful and
Exactly.
it
And
has
that's
substance.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the work is, right? Where they're wounded, where they didn't get the healed whole version. So yeah, for me, especially like with Lilith. Lilith was a
Yeah.
huge one. So for those that aren't familiar with the story of Lilith, she was like the first woman before Eve, Adam and Eve. And I remember even just learning that. Like, what do you mean there was like someone else before Eve? My Catholic roots, I had never heard of Lilith. So just even discovering her was
Right.
a huge, like,
Right.
wow moment. And then realizing like the suppression of the
Mhm.
feminine energy and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
And
big
then how
time.
she was demonized, cast
Sure.
out and demonized. And so that automatically took this like loving energy that was in her own, wholeness and speaking her truth in her voice that was then like shunned and cast out and demonized by cultures. So I had to heal that energy for the collective.
Right. Right.
And then I was able to get her to the other side and kind of give her the one thing she wanted, which was to be able to go back to God's kingdom in the story. Um, and that was beautiful, and it happened in small stages over a few months or
Really?
whatnot. Yeah, and I mean, it was just so profound. And in helping her, was in the process freeing my own self of the I want to say like the vibrational frequencies that were keeping me like enslaved. I'm just
Mm,
enslaved, trapped, whatever. That's the words that are coming. But that
sure.
was keeping me held at a vibrational line within the collective that I didn't want to be at anymore. I wanted to break those chains and those shackles and raise up and ascend. Um, so with working specifically with Lilith and helping her, like she helped me, and that's why I feel like it's a relationship. Um,
Sure.
with these archetypal energies that are within us. It's a relationship with ourselves. And kind of going back to what you had said about the whole body issue, that is definitely like the core of the feminine.
Right.
Because like look at how our bodies have been used and exploited against us.
Absolutely.
They've been taking away from us, like any of our passion and creativity, like you said earlier on. We're kind of coming out of a time period where women were only seen as, realistically a resource for a man. Like your goal is
Right.
just to be somebody's wife and to be
Exactly.
awesome children.
Right.
Don't have any interests or hobbies. Don't even think about trying to leave your house and be like, a member of anything higher than
Right. And it
Lilith,
wasn't long
right?
ago. I mean, that was only
Yeah,
like 100 years ago,
no, definitely not. And when you think about before that, we lived in a time period where we didn't even acknowledge children. It
Right.
was children are to be seen and not heard. So go
Totally.
stand over there and do your work, but be quiet and don't have a voice. And
Right.
so all of that is a part of our collective wounds that
Absolutely.
we're all individually attached to and maybe not conscious of, because again, it's ingrained, right?
It's
Into
in the
that area.
cells. Yeah. Yeah. Deep. Yeah.
So I think that's part of healing the wounded energy and getting it into that divine where we have our voice, we have our creative expression, we know our roles. For the feminine, when she's put into that position, right? Because now all of her creativity and power and in her essence is taken away because the masculine is holding on to that power and control. That's when the resentment comes in. That's when, the manipulation comes in. And
Right.
so all the energies just kind of keep spiraling into like the direction of woundedness even further,
Right.
rather than coming back into like the healed energetic vibrational alignment.
Right. Yeah. And that's and that's exactly it. Like we have to recognize that there's these greater aspects of the culture and the society that we're all working with,
Yeah.
and and finding our own way to do it, and finding our own avenues in our, because again, it's for the bigger collective, but it's a microcosm within you. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what we all have, this responsibility to do our own work. Because if we could all just kind of get to those parts of ourselves, they're right. We're doing that for the collective, and that's an amazing story with the Anana journey. That must have been a beautiful experience for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's been amazing. But then you feel crazy because, like,
Right.
how do I articulate this or tell somebody this? It's
It's
not really easy to find those people. So that's why
right.
when you and I met in person at our first ceremonial retreat with San Pedro, just to be able to stand there, and we all have such a beautiful like community and
Yeah,
conversations,
we do.
but to just meet someone that you had only seen on Zoom, in a check-in a few times, and then to meet in person and to be able to instantly connect and be like, oh my God. And I remember like building up the courage to be like, have you heard of twin flames? Because again, like it's not something I really wanted to discuss for the last few years and whatnot. But I just kind of had a feeling, and you're like, well, of course. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God. And so
Well,
it felt really, really beautiful. And I'll be honest, through our friendship and our, connection and relationship, um, I've been able to notice like my divine feminine and like your work and your divine masculine, and
mhm,
even just in our community space with a few other people of seeing them do the work.
right.
And there was a time period where I never thought I would have come into an alignment with others. I just thought
Mhm,
like, wow, nobody's got to be out there really doing the work, or
right.
like, is it possible that men are healing their toxic traits and wanting actual, healthy connections with feminine energy? Is this something that's actually ever going to happen? um so to come into this whole healing space in the past year and meet these people, like you, and whatnot, it's been encouraging, and it's been very heartwarming,
Mm,
and it makes me feel seen and heard finally, and not alone anymore.
right.
And for that, I am so grateful. um and to be able to watch the journey kind of unfold through
Right.
all of the healing, right? Through all
Right.
these stages and phases that were coming up, that, like you said, some of them are severely painful,
Oh
especially
yeah.
around the twin flame.
Right.
There was moments where I really truly would have rather accepted death,
Mm,
and just get out of this planet and out of this life, than to keep on having to do the twin flame path, because it
right.
was so painful. But I managed to heal that, even, and
Right.
get through that. So I think you just got to keep chugging along on the
No,
journey.
yeah, and you never know how the work's gonna transform, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, this is the part of that work that I needed to do." You know what I mean? And that's staying on it. And yeah, with the community up in Maine, I think like we've talked about that before, and I think a lot of what it is, men that are really truly doing the work kind of isolate themselves while they're doing the work. And I'm not saying like I'm completely done. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm completely healed, because that's
Oh
never going to
no,
be the
no,
case, you know.
no!
But
Healing doesn't ever end. It
I'm
just
a,
comes in
I'm
waves and phases.
right. I'm more comfortable with the work that I'm doing, and
Yeah.
I can be open about it
Yes.
now. But
Level of mastery, like you said earlier.
right, there was a long time where I hermited, and
Mhm.
I kind of kept within myself, and
Yep.
because again, like you were saying, like, who do I say this stuff to? Like, how do I just say I just did a breathwork meditation, and I connected to Hermes, and you know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden you start to sound like you know what I mean? Like you
Yes.
said, you don't know what to say about it because you don't know how to even speak it. So a lot of that true transformation, and then when you start to hit stuff and you start to hit your own nerves, it's not a good scene. And I think that's like that whole idea of kind of like, a man going off into the woods, for 7 days to be by himself. Like, that's super important. And I think because we don't live in a society where that's possible.
Mhm.
I think a lot of men who are truly doing the work are internalizing it, and that can be problematic as well. And I think that's kind of where I'm at now, is trying to get men to be more vulnerable and
Mhm.
open up, and trying to
Vulnerability
get
is part of
men's
that
circles
feminine.
going, and that sort of thing, because I think men definitely need men to open up to themselves so they can go on their masculine healing journey, so that they can eventually get to healing their feminine. Because I don't think that it's wise for a masculine to attempt to really try to heal that feminine unless they're very strong in their masculine, because it's a difficult ride. All of this takes knowing aspects of yourself that are crucial in these situations of transformation. And we have to just kind of like step by step go with it. And a lot of that's really internal.
Mhm. Absolutely. So there was a question from the Zion, and they wanted to ask your background, John. May I
My
ask?
background,
Yeah, what is your background is? Um, so not really specific there. So I don't know if you.
I mean, I could just give a brief
I don't know.
overview.
Yeah.
Like I come from a culture. started touring with Fish when I was 14. So I was kind of, and this is in the 90s. So I was kind of like, I got really into a community culture, living on the road, this true like essence of an, a subculture that could exist, that was like, at that time was very about the aspects of like love and peace. There was a lot of that energy coming off the Grateful Dead kind of aspect.
Mhm.
And then I, definitely saw the toxicity in that environment as I was in it for a few years. And I went into the film industry, and, I wanted to be like a writer and director and that sort of thing, and kind of got wound up in production, and I became a locations manager, and I really couldn't see myself working in that industry anymore. Again, like I kind of went in and recognized that the toxicity that industry brought out of me, just like the way that kind of like touring with music kind of brought out the toxicity within me. And so I kind of got out of that, and I went into cannabis, and I had a beautiful, lovely, absolutely gorgeous experience working with cannabis for 12 years and being an advocate, getting legalization or patients' rights and that sort of thing, when before this craziness in this industry that we're seeing now, which is a completely beast that is destroying the
The
essence of a
machine
beautiful
likes its
goddess.
money.
Oh my God. So I'm, I worked with cannabis and direct with patients, and over that time, kind of went on my self-discovery journey. Like I started to play the game, and like that fall from master to apprentice, like I got into the cannabis industry. I kind of got really big into it, got partners, legislation, this, that, and the other. And then Spirit was just like, nope, this is not your path. And your path is to like really get very intimate with this plant by yourself and do the work that you're supposed to do. And that was kind of a mission I went on for about 5 years, where I was kind of like just gardening by myself, learning about the plant, learning about my connection to all conscious plants and that sort of thing. And and then I'm right now I'm a embodiment coach and facilitator that is kind of working with men and trying to get men to really discover themselves again, and really get to this trauma that's embedded in our body. I always say, my head's my worst enemy. So if I can take all this stuff and put it in my body can be stronger than my head. And that's really that ego spirituality. I want my heart to be calling the shots, not my head, my heart, and my gut as a team, being able, my intuition and my love to trump my thought processes, really.
Right. And that intuition is feminine.
Well, that's it. That's that bridge, and because I get it,
Yeah.
like that's exactly it, is that feminine intuition, that countering that masculine headspace that's like, structure and routine and all that stuff, and like, this is the way that, these markers for this society, and you should be hitting them and all that stuff that like really takes you off your path.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was probably very long. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
how to explain myself.
No, I know. Trust me. I get that too, right? The little background bios. Yeah, and and next week you said you would come back, right? And we would talk about plant medicines.
Sure,
So,
yeah, if you'll have me,
okay. Yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, definitely next week, that's our goal. We're going to talk about, because like I said, we're part of this beautiful community space where we come together, and we've been doing, ayahuasca and San Pedro, which is a cactus, and mushrooms, and so it's been just such a beautiful journey.
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
profound, right? To, again, part of that initiation and that calling, when you look at the shamanic archetype
Oh,
story kind of,
absolutely.
pathway. So I feel like it's very shamanic, which again is another word that is just
Well, right,
thrown around. And
right.
so I try to be careful with my words, but
Well, I
it,
mean, I think, again, the essence of the essence of that word is so powerful, but it's just being so overused. But still, like in certain circumstances, like, I mean, that ceremony is a shamanic space,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful space, and
Hmm.
what we're doing as a community and a group is powerful. And
Absolutely.
and I think what we're doing is bringing um, a huge aspect of what we're all lacking and where we're wounded, which is I think we're wounded from not having these
Hmm.
ceremonies and these different things. Like to speak to the wounded masculine, the fact that we're not initiated, and to the feminine as well, because the feminine's not initiated, and we
Right.
don't have an initiation situation in our society that says, all right, you've gone from this stage to that stage. We kind of just meander and
Hmm.
like filter around between, like, well, you're
Yes.
graduating high school. Like, well, that's not it. We weren't taken aside when we were 12 and, brought fear out of us, love
Right.
put back in, to show how much pain you can endure, how much love you can have, how much, what it takes, how much wood you should be able to carry as a man in the society. These
Right.
kinds of things really kind of prevent us from really expanding into our true self at a certain time. And I think the more that we can authenticate a ceremony for here, because things that are happening in the jungle, that's fantastic, and that is definitely for a culture that has the problems that the cultures in the jungles have, but we have different problems here.
Right.
The people in the jungle, they're born and they're not put down for months and months and months. Somebody's always holding them. Our society, we're not held enough as children, and that's a
Yeah.
fundamental problem that we're starting to that wound that we is so hard to get to because you don't even really know it's there, but your cells know it's there,
Yeah.
and these ceremonies can bring that out, if that's the situation. So what we're doing and creating this, I don't want to say Americanized, but we're creating a situation in a space for our society, which I think is beautiful.
Absolutely. I agree completely. And it's just been a tool on this healing and integrational path that we
Hmm.
both have found ourselves on.
Right.
So I think for me, I've done so much intentional healing that when I do go into that space, like I don't have to worry. Like I'm not like going to sit with my inner child, to deal with, a mommy or daddy issue from when I was 6. It's I've gotten through a lot of the healing and stuff, and now it's usually about just kind of tapping into like the beauty of the universe and just seeing other things and still getting lessons and whatnot. But
Right.
people and what I've witnessed, like the power of the medicine is beautiful. But we'll get into that next week,
Sure.
more
Yeah.
for sure. Because God, we could just do a whole nother
Oh yeah. No. Yeah.
all day going. Um, but we're coming up on an hour, so we'll get ready to end in a second. I just really, really, truly wanted to thank you for just your time and your energy and being in the space today. Very, very grateful for your friendship and your support. So thank you for, being here and giving us some insight into the masculine mind and heart. It's
Uh,
very much needed. And I will just say, like, I really truly agree with what you were saying about these spaces, right, where we can come together, whether it's a retreat space or like a men's circle or whatever. That vulnerability, I think, is something we all have to kind of get comfortable with the uncomfortable so that we can grow and heal and come together, and know that
Absolutely.
we're safe and protected and provided for. But we
Yes.
gotta keep pushing forward to get to our own higher potential and to be the best version of ourselves is really like the goal at the end of the day. It's not about other people. It's just about being the best you that's possible in this
Right.
lifetime. And if
Right.
you truly, truly love yourself, like how could you not want that and be willing to do anything and everything to give yourself that?
Right.
So, I mean, that's just kind of my thought, I guess.
No. Well, that's absolutely beautiful, and I think that's what we're all kind of doing is just trying to be the highest version of ourselves, and it's not always easy, and it takes a lot. You got to keep your hands on the wheel for sure. You know.
Absolutely.
But thank you for having me. I really appreciate being on the show, and I really appreciate our friendship and all that we've discovered, and and on this journey that we were taking, and I look forward to discussing more and learning more and sharing more. And I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, everybody. So thanks for sticking around and or checking us out. Just definitely curious, your thoughts on the wounded and divine feminine masculine. So feel free to message us or let us know, or yeah. So have a good day. Take care. Bye.
Bye.